Hi, I'm Tara Johnson, and I'm so happy to be back with you again, getting our hearts ready for Christmas. And I just wanted to share this fun story with you that got my heart ready. So, not long ago, my husband and my youngest son and I were all in Branson, Missouri. We just wanted a little family getaway time, and we thought we'll go to Silver Dollar City, ride the rides, eat too much yummy amusement park food, and we were looking for something to do our last night there. And we noticed the Sight and Sound Theater had a big production of the story of Esther. So we thought that looks fun. And we're all Bible loving folks. And my 11-year-old loves plays, especially when it has music and action and all the fun stuff. So we got our tickets, got our toasted nuts that they give us and our drinks, and we settled down into our seats. And they had already given the warning that in 15 minutes the show will begin. Use the restroom now, all that fun stuff. And we were sitting there, and I heard a bell, and a big booming voice from somewhere behind us yelled, "Santa Clauses, ho, 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 represent." And I looked back, and there were about 50 Santa Clauses and their wives, all dressed, and they all stood up and went, "Ho, ho, ho," and everyone began cheering. And I thought, what is going on? They were sitting like right behind us. I don't know how I didn't see them before, but I thought, why are there so many Santa Clauses at the showing of Esther in August? But what is going on? So at intermission, my son and I were talking about how great the musical was and everything we loved and the sets. And then I noticed one of the Santa Clauses was sitting directly behind me. And I just turned around and I said, "Hi, my name's Tara. Can I ask you something?" And he goes, "Sure." I said, "Why are all of these Santa Clauses here?" I said, "I love it, but I have no idea what's going on." And he said, "Oh, once a year we get together for Santa school here in Branson." I said, "There is a Santa school?" And he said, "Yes, we get together all across the United States. We come, we bring our wives, because lots of times our wives want to play Mrs. Claus. And we have a weekend of working on how to better connect to children. We learn magic tricks that we can do to surprise reluctant kids, how to make children feel at ease." And I said, "Oh, that is so much fun." They said, "We have a blast." And then we always go out for dinner and shows and just have a good time bonding as a group. And we stay in contact through the year. I said, "That is so much fun. I'd love the idea of Santa school." And I said, "What is it like when you have the hard kids that you're dealing with?" And this Santa Claus immediately kind of got this misty-eyed sadness in his face. And he said, "A lot of our training now is dealing with trauma, children that have been through trauma. What is our role? What is our place?" And we had the most lovely, deep conversation about what that looks like. So we exchanged business cards. I follow him on Instagram now. He follows me. And I get to see what all these Santas in the Santa school are doing. Well, at the same time, I realized, I've got an awesome book I haven't read in a while, and it's written by my friend, Dan Short, who plays Santa Claus, and it's called the Santa Claus Chronicles. And I thought he never mentioned Santa School in there, but I was just rereading through the book, and I remember these kids that are going through hard Christmases, and what does that look like for these Santas who come in just wanting to be a blessing to somebody? How do they deal with this stuff? And I found this particular story by my friend Dan and thought I would share it with you guys. Hopefully it will be a blessing to you the way it was for me. I'll, keep it as short as I can. He said, "One afternoon after we began seeing kids in November, a mom and grandma brought a little boy who was about 4 years old to visit me. It was mid-afternoon and there was no waiting line. His name was Cade. He was comfortable meeting me. He hopped right up on my knee with no crying or tears or scariness. As we began to talk, I asked him, 'Cade, what do you want for Christmas this year?' He said, 'Well, I want a cow.' I smiled and told him, 'Wow, does it need to be a real cow or a play cow? Does it need to be big or little? It's very important that I get the details right.' Well, Cade said, 'I want a little cow.' Okay, I thought I could handle this. 'Is there anything else you want from Santa?' He goes, 'Yes, a blue horse.' Well, an odd request, but nevertheless, I thought it was cute. And I told him, I said, a blue horse. Maybe I could just get you a regular horse and put it outside for a while until it turns blue from the cold." And the little boy thought this was a fantastic idea. He said, "Will that work?" And the boy said, "Oh, that's great, sure." Well, this all seemed to be going well and easily. And then I said, "Okay, Cade, before we get our picture taken together, would you like to tell me anything else you want Santa to bring you for Christmas?" And he thought for a moment and said, Santa, nothing more for me, but can you bring something for my brother Case? He's in the hospital. Well, I looked over at his mom and grandma, and they were both in tears. They told me Case was Cade's baby brother who had been born premature. He was struggling to survive. His lungs and organs hadn't formed, and he had deficits in his arms and legs. They said he'd been on a ventilator for weeks, and that the doctor told him there was little hope that he would get better. So I looked at Cade. I said, what kind of present do you want for your baby brother? With deep sincerity, Cade said, I want him to come home for Christmas, Santa. That's what I want. And I told him, I said, I took a slow, deep breath and looked him in the eyes. I said, Cade, Santa is just a toy maker. I wish I had the power to make Cade strong enough to come home, to help him get better and stronger, but I don't have that power. But I do know somebody who does have that power. That's God. Why don't we ask him? Would it be all right if we pray together and ask him to help heal your little brother in time for Christmas? Cade said yes, and I asked his mom and grandma to join us. So we formed a circle, held hands, and I asked God to make Cade's little brother all better and to bring him home for Christmas. I couldn't speak, and we three adults sat there and blubbered through this holy moment. I turned my attention back to Cade when it was all done, and I thanked him for his prayer and told him he had given his little brother the best gift ever. And I also told him how proud I was of him, that he had the true spirit of Christmas, thinking of others and wanting them to have blessings. And I asked him if he could be my special helper this year. And of course, he said yes. I gave him a brass sleigh bell and tied it to his arm with a piece of leather lanyard and told him I shared my sleigh bells only with special children who have the true spirit of giving and caring for others. And I asked him to take it home and tie it to his bedpost or put it near his bed. And remember that each time that he saw it, he needed to pray for his brother and thank God for hearing him each time he looked at the bell. He promised he would, and they left. Well, just a few weeks later, through a friend, Dan got a message from Cade's family. And it was this. There was an email update from Cade's family that announced the news. As of 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, December 17th, the family had received the biggest Christmas present. Case was off the ventilator. Said after that, those brothers came to visit me every year before they finally outgrew Santa. But I think their story proves we can never outgrow God's love for us, nor the mighty power of prayer. And I thought that was such a beautiful picture of what these men and women are. We don't think of going to see Santa as somebody being in the trenches, but what a beautiful, beautiful story of what Christmas is really about. And what I used to try to explain Santa to my kids, we always made a point we would never lie to them, but we also wanted them to enjoy the love of fairy tales. So as a Christian, I always found this hard. Like, how do I navigate, Santa and Jesus and all, and Christmas and all this stuff? And I finally came to the conclusion, this is what I told all my kids. Santa, for you guys, the way you think of Santa is really mom and dad. But the love that prompts giving is a gift from Jesus. So really Santa gives in secret. He sneaks in, he gives gifts in secret, which is what Jesus told us to do. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. Don't give to get the attention. But this is the example of the spirit of God's love is giving and not pointing back to yourself, but saying, I don't have the answers. I can't fix this, but I know the one who does. So I pray that your Christmas will be full of giving and prayers and blessings, and that we'll see God work in miraculous, mighty ways that not even Santa can explain.
Hi, I'm Grace Fox, and I would love to share with you my most memorable Christmas. It happened when my husband and I lived in Nepal back in the 80s. We lived in a mud and rock house with a grass thatch roof with no running water, no indoor plumbing, and it was in the middle of a little Hindu village of about 70 people. So there were other people working on the hydro project that my husband was involved in, other expatriates, but we all lived in separate villages about a half hour's walk away from each other. And when Christmas rolled around, I remember the first Christmas Eve out in the village. Um, the coworkers decided that they were going to go from village to village and share the Christmas story. And in order to do it most effectively, they they had a Nepalese woman who was a born again believer, very unusual at that time in the 80s to have believers that were bold enough to speak about their faith because they could go to prison for their faith at that time. And she came along with the group from village to village with a flannel graph board of the characters involved in the Christmas story. And she would speak it in her own language and, of course, be so fluent, not like the rest of us expats that were still struggling with learning the language. I guess I was pregnant at the time and really struggling with nausea. So I was not a part of the group that went from village to village, but they came to our village and all of our neighbors came around and gathered in this little area that we would call it a front yard, but it was pretty basic. And they just all sat right on the mud and listened to her as she sat on the little ledge of our doorstep, set up the flannel graph board beside her, and somebody held a kerosene lantern there because, again, there was no electricity. So a kerosene lantern, and that lantern with the glow just flickered on the flannel graph board and the characters. So this gal told the Christmas story to people who had never heard it before. I'd never witnessed such a thing. I was in my mid 20s at that point, but I remember sitting and watching the people's faces with the glow of the lamps are flickering on their faces as well. They were mesmerized by this story. They'd never seen flannel graph before either. And so they were mesmerized by the Christmas story. And as she moved the characters about the board, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, I grew up in the North American culture where Christmas involves, you see the Christmas things in the store before Halloween is over, and Christmas trees and Christmas lights, and there might be Christmas parades in town, and all of the things that go along with Christmas in my North American culture, the turkey, the stuffing, the cranberries, the whole 10 yards. But I had none of that year. None of it. Everything was stripped away. And we had the Christmas story in its entirety just put before us on the flannel graph board in that beautiful simplicity. And Christmas for me has never been the same. So even though I came back to North America several years later and I've lived here since, I can honestly say that I go back to that as the most memorable Christmas in my life, remembering to strip away all of those things that we can make Christmas about that are tradition, but they have nothing to do with Jesus, God, Emmanuel, coming to dwell in our neighborhood and become one of us. And so that's my most memorable Christmas. And I plan to remember that for the rest of my life because it influences the way I celebrate the season. But remember Jesus, have a wonderful Christmas, and know you are loved.